Hello, everyone. Today, let's dive together into a fascinating but often misunderstood subject: the extraordinary miracles attributed to the Prophet Muhammad. Contrary to the widespread idea that only prophets like Jesus or Moses performed miracles, Islamic history is full of accounts attesting to numerous supernatural events related to the last messenger. In our popular culture, we often talk about biblical miracles: the resurrection, the parting of the waters, the transformation of water into wine. But what about the miracles of the Prophet Muhammad? Prepare to discover the astonishing wonders that marked his life and his prophetic mission. Extraordinary phenomena occurred from the moment of his birth. His mother testified that at the moment of his coming into the world, a dazzling light shone forth, illuminating as far as the distant palaces of Syria. The chronicles also report that on that night, 14 balconies of the palace of Kesra collapsed. The sacred fire of the Persian Magi went out after burning for centuries, and several churches collapsed around Lake Sawa. But this was only the beginning of a life marked by wonders. One of the most impressive miracles, attested by numerous witnesses, concerns the water that flowed from his fingers. Imagine the scene. 6 years after the Hijra, during a pilgrimage to Mecca, his caravan found itself without water in the middle of the desert. The situation was critical for the 1,500 people present. The Prophet simply dipped his hand into a small container holding a little water, and suddenly the liquid began to gush out between his fingers, enabling everyone to drink and perform their ablutions. This miracle is reminiscent of Moses causing water to gush from a rock, but here the miraculous spring emerges from the very body of the Prophet. On several occasions, he also blessed food, miraculously multiplying it to feed hungry crowds. Authentic accounts relate how a simple bowl of bread soaked in broth could satiate successive groups of people from morning until noon without ever being emptied. When someone was surprised by this phenomenon, the Prophet simply pointed to the sky, signifying that this abundance came from above. His invocations were systematically answered. A particularly striking anecdote has come down to us. One day of pouring rain in Medina, the faithful asked him to invoke Allah to stop the rain that was damaging the houses. He said this prayer: "O Allah, around us, not on us." Instantly, the clouds dispersed above the city, forming a perfect circle around Medina, but leaving the sky clear above the inhabitants. This impossible meteorological phenomenon was observed by all those present. The Prophet also healed the sick by simple contact or invocation. A particularly touching story tells how a blind man came to him to regain his sight. The Prophet then gave him a choice. Either he would invoke Allah for his immediate healing, or he would save this invocation for the afterlife, which would be more spiritually beneficial. The man chose immediate healing. After the Prophet asked him to perform his ablutions and a specific prayer, the man's sight was instantly restored. Even more impressively, he put back the eye of his companion Qatada, whose eyeball had come out of its socket during the Battle of Badr. Not only did the eye return to its place and function, but according to some accounts, it even became better than the other. Another astonishing miracle concerns the exorcism of a young boy possessed by a demon. His mother took him to the Prophet, who simply ordered the demon, "Come out of him. I am Muhammad, the messenger of God." The mother later testified that they never observed any abnormal behavior in the child again. But the most spectacular miracle is undoubtedly the splitting of the moon. When the inhabitants of Mecca asked the Prophet for an irrefutable sign of his divine mission, the moon split into 2 distinct parts before their astonished eyes. This cosmic phenomenon was even observed thousands of kilometers away, as in India, where the king of Malabar, a direct witness to the event, converted to Islam and had the first Indian mosque built, which still exists today. Interestingly, NASA has discovered mysterious cracks on the lunar surface, so deep and with such clean cuts that no satisfactory scientific explanation has been proposed so far. Some see them as the remains of this miraculous separation. Another touching miracle is that of the tree trunk. In Medina, the Prophet usually leaned on a tree trunk during his sermons. When a pulpit was built to allow him to be better seen and heard, he abandoned this support. Then, in front of the whole assembly, the trunk began to moan like a crying child. The prophet descended from his pulpit and went to console the tree by running his hand over it, as one would soothe a sentient being. This extraordinary miracle was reported by numerous eyewitnesses. As the recipient of divine revelation, the prophet was sometimes aware of future events. Thus, one day when he was on Mount Uhud with his companions Abu Bakr, Umar, and Uthman, the mountain began to shake. He then said, "Be calm, for there is on you only a prophet, a truthful one, and 2 martyrs." Indeed, Omar and Uthman were later murdered, becoming martyrs as the prophet had predicted. Of course, the greatest miracle of the Prophet Muhammad remains the Qur'an itself. How could an illiterate man from the desert, who could neither read nor write, have produced such a book more than 1400 years ago? A book that contains recently discovered scientific information, such as the oceanographic phenomena of haloclines, precise details of embryology, or astronomical facts verified only with our modern technology. A book whose linguistic style has never been imitated, even by the greatest Arab poets of the time. A book that accurately recounts past events and predicts future events, without any internal contradiction. A book preserved in its original form, and still today memorized in its entirety by millions of Muslims throughout the world. I have only mentioned here a few of the many miracles attributed to the Prophet Muhammad. His entire life was marked by extraordinary phenomena that impressed his contemporaries. So who could still claim that the last prophet was not endowed with any miracles? I hope that these stories have fascinated you as much as they continue to inspire believers. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to share it and subscribe for more explorations of Islamic history. See you soon.